Hello and welcome to Fantastic Fights, the podcast about a middle-aged man playing adventure game books out loud on the internet. That middle-aged man is me, Hieronymus J. Doom, and this instalment sees us tackling Sorcery Book 3, The Seven Serpents by Steve Jackson, with art by the incomparable John Blanche. This book follows on from Carré City Port of Traps, which I very much enjoyed. I'm playing the Wizard reissue, which has cover art by Mel Grant, which shows exactly 7 serpents writhing towards the viewer in a way I would describe as threatening. It's pretty good. All the serpents have their own distinctive look, they're colour-coded, and the overall effect is like looking at the Avengers, but for snakes. It's a shame not to have the original John Blanche cover art, but this certainly does the job. Before we get into the meat of the episode, I need to say that I'm actually recording this in the first 2 weeks of July. I've got family stuff happening this month, it being summer and all, and that means cramming all the podcasts I'd normally do into really quite a short space of time. That means I'm actually recording this back to back with July's bonus episode and the first 3 episodes of Popular Antiquarian for the month. I'm feeling a bit frazzled, but I'd rather that than skip a week because I've barely missed an episode since I started this podcast, and it would be a shame to start now. It does mean that anyone who joined the Patreon in July or sent me an exciting message isn't going to get a shout out until August. Speaking of, patreon.com/HJDoom, that's the place to go to support this nonsense and keep the content flowing. I'm grateful to everyone who supports me, and I'm hard at work on the next game book, which bears an increasingly close resemblance to a certain late 70s British science fiction show. I'll hope to be sharing some more concrete details in early August once I've written the opening and the full outline. Now on with the show, let's remind ourselves of the rules. I'll keep this brief since the rules are the same as for the previous 2 books in the series. You get skill, stamina and luck, all present and correct, but because you're a wizard, you only get to roll 1d6 plus 4 for skill. Alongside this, you get a few fancy extras, including the chance to call on your patron goddess Libra precisely once per adventure. She can heal a disease or a curse, get you out of a tricky scrape, or, arguably most usefully, restore your skill, stamina and luck to their original scores. And maybe I'll try and remember to do that this time when I'm on the verge of death. You have the ability to cast spells, but this requires you to remember what the 3-letter code is that relates to the spell you're trying to cast. You'll be given 5 different 3-letter options in the text, and you've got to pick the right one. Spells cost stamina, but may also require some bits and bobs to be effective. You aren't allowed to look spells up, which is a really neat feature. There's all kinds of spells, from straightforward damage to utility spells like telepathy or the ability to summon goblins, which has literally never once been useful. Having played through the previous books, I've acquired a certain amount of tat, some of which might be handy for the odd magic spell. My character, who has the very heroic moniker Albany Gardiloo, has a skill of 9, a stamina of 19 and a luck of 11. They have a whopping 36 gold pieces and a single portion of provisions to eat on their travels. They have stuffed their pack with the following objects: a pipe, which is a handy spell component, a bag of mixed creature teeth, 4 giant and 20 goblin teeth, I think, some beeswax, a handful of pebbles, a woven skull cap, a knucklebone bracelet, a sun jewel, a green wig, and most importantly of all, a silver ring which can be used in the 7 serpents, and it points me to a specific paragraph in this book, which we'll take a look at once we've caught up. I think that's everything. Let's play The 7 Serpents. I'm very excited for this one, as I do not remember ever playing this as a child, and I've had a quick shufty through, and none of the art looks particularly familiar. So, this is going in completely blind. It's actually slightly shorter than City Port of Traps, which is fine. I'm a big believer in books being as long as they need to be and no longer. The story so far is that the arch-mage of Mampang has stolen the fabled crown of kings and is almost certainly going to use it to unite the various monsters of Cathbad under one banner. We have volunteered to travel to his gaff and regain what was lost before our home kingdom of Analand dissolves into chaos, which would make it easy pickings for its more aggressive neighbours and also for the baddies of Cathbad. So far we've traversed the oddly pleasant Shamatanti Hills and made our way through the nefarious city port of Kare on the Jubaji River. Now it's time to venture into the Baklands, where the really lawless portion of the adventure begins. Let's have a gander at this unusual silver ring and find out what it's about. The serpent ring you are given will be an invaluable item in this part of your journey, for it has power over the arch-mage's serpents. If you confront the serpents while wearing this ring, you can command them to reveal useful information. You can do this in the following way. At certain references, when you confront a serpent, these references will all end in a number 3. You may command the serpent to reveal its information by deducting 14 from the reference number you are on and turning to that reference. If you wish to do this, you must remember this instruction, as no options will be given in the text. If you do not have the serpent ring, you are forbidden from discovering this information, and you should not be reading this reference now. So, a little bit of a slap on the wrist for those just rummaging at random through the book looking for options, but for us, a handy little bit of information, and I'm going to have to memorise this. So, confronting the serpent always ends in a 3, and we've got to deduct 14 from that reference to compel the serpent to reveal its information. I see no chance of me forgetting this. I have a mind like a steel trap. Very old, rusty steel trap. But yes, it feels as though this adventure might well be an awful lot more difficult if you haven't played Kare City Port of Traps, while still I assume technically being possible to beat. The dark storm clouds roll across the sky as you start your journey across the Baklands. This stage of your trip will be the most testing yet. The plains of Badubak are unknown to the mapmakers of Analand. Although certainly uncivilized, the Baklands are inhabited by nomadic tribes and solitary creatures. You will find few friends here, but you must march on regardless. The crunch of your footsteps on the rough trail rudely interrupts the eerie silence hanging in the air. Apart from the great wall of the city port behind you, the landscape is featureless, devoid of vegetation, creatures, or any structural punctuation to the horizon. An hour later, the barren waste has changed not at all. But in the distance behind you, the faint callings of birds can be heard. The noise gets louder and you stop. They are gaining quickly on you, and there is a picture of said birds. There's one very much in the foreground, claws outstretched, eyes fixed on you, big wings flapping about, and more birds behind. Great evocative bit of work. I think the framing of it is hardly unusual. This is looking head on at a bird, which is very much how you would, I think, generally approach this sort of bit of artwork, but it's a really lovely Baroque version of that. No complaints from me. A sudden thought makes you freeze. Zarman birdmen? Surely not this far from their homelands. I mean, given that it's Zarmen birdmen who actually stole the Crown of Kings from Analand in the first place, I think they've maybe decided to expand their range a little bit. Crows? No, crows' calls are not as piercing as these shrieks. Then what? You turn to face your pursuers. From nowhere, a black shape drops from the sky. You duck just in time to avoid the sharp, outstretched talons of the attacking bird as it dives at your neck. You steady yourself and clutch your weapon. The bird has soared past you up into the air to rejoin its group. 4 dark nighthawks now circle above you, ready to attack. So we're being thrown straight in the deep end in terms of challenge, letting us know that we are in an unpleasant part of the world. and that it's an uncivilized locale with all manner of deadly flora and fauna just waiting to sink its teeth into us. So yeah, great bit of setting the scene, but how are we going to deal with it? We can either draw our weapon or use magic. Well, I'm a big fan of the magic system in this book. I think it's great, so we will use magic. Which spell will you use? Wall, fog, law, fix, or mud? Okay, so Wall will create a wall of force at a cost of 4 stamina points. It's one of the classic spells in the repertoire. Fog, I think, will create fog, but you need to be in a sealed room to do it. I'm not sure what Law does. I feel as though Fix maybe holds someone in place. And Mud summons some mud, but you need sand for that one. Of these, I don't think I've got the components for Fix or Mud. So really my only realistic choice is Wall, given that I don't know whether Law is a real spell or not. And Fog is only effective indoors. Is it worth 4 stamina? I don't think it is. I'm going to gamble that this is a relatively straightforward fight, because it would be very mean to put a tough fight early doors and force you to use magic to get past it. You draw your weapon and wait for the creatures to attack. They circle quickly, picking up pace, until finally they dart down towards you in attacking lines. Their speed makes them difficult targets. Choose which you will fight and roll for attack strength. Roll also for the attack strengths of the Nighthawks. If your attack strength is higher than that of your target, you have wounded it, but each Nighthawk rolling a higher attack strength than you will wound you. Resolve the combat. So, we've got a Nighthawk with a skill of 7, a stamina 5. We've got a Nighthawk with a skill of 6 and stamina 5. We've got a Nighthawk with a skill of 7 and stamina 5. And we've got a Nighthawk with skill of 7, stamina 4. And something happens after 3 attack rounds. So, I could easily lose 4 stamina, which is what I'd have spent on the force field on this combat, but equally I might lose no stamina at all. With my heart very slightly in my mouth, I'm going to roll some dice. Okay, after 3 attack rounds I have killed 1 Nighthawk and I have lost precisely 4 stamina points, so exactly as if I'd cast the force field spell, which I guess might not have worked anyway, but we shall see what happens now. I've also reduced 1 Nighthawk to stamina 3. The Nighthawks circle and prepare for another attack. Suddenly, the formation breaks and their cries take on a different tone. Something has disturbed them, and they seem to be in a state of confusion, but you can see nothing. A moment later, a shape forms in the air in their midst. The Nighthawks shriek as a gold-crest eagle materialises and lashes out at them with its deadly beak. Your spirits rise at your good fortune. Goldcrest eagles are raised and trained in Analand as birds of war. But what is this great eagle doing so far from its home? The eagle snaps its razor-sharp beak through one of the Nighthawks and plucks at another with its talons. The 2 remaining birds turn to the west and dart away to safety. With the threat dispersed, the eagle drops down to land by you. Around its neck is a small tube containing a message sealed with the royal seal of the King of Analand, which you unroll and read. Okay, so it's actually written in handwriting as like an insert in the page, and that is not easy to read. I will do my best. We trust these tidings reach you in fair health, but must warn you of impending peril. Your mission is discovered. The Mampang's eyes have spied our plan, and word is on its way to the dark fortress. Too late we discovered our unwelcome eavesdroppers, and news of your quest is being carried towards High Zarman by 7 Serpents, the arch-mage's most trusted servants. By now they will have reached the Baklands, and there they will divide to complete their journey separately. If you are still able, seek them out, for they must stop to rest and eat. Destroy the creatures before they reach their goal, else the arch-mage will prepare a deadly welcome for you. Find Shadrach the Hermit for advice, for naught moves through the Baklands without his knowledge. Our hearts are with you. So that's ominous, but hardly unexpected. So once again, we're on a kind of scavenger hunt, but instead of magical doohickeys or lines from an opening spell, it's big snakes. I assume they're actual big snakes, and that the 7 serpents are not just a fancy name for some people. I guess we'll find out. I mean, it's big snakes on the front cover. I'll be really annoyed if it turns out that these are figurative rather than literal snakes. You look back at the great bird which has brought you the welcome warning, but it is no longer with you. Having delivered its message, it will no doubt be winging its way back to Analand, flying safely under a shroud of invisibility. Okay, I know that it is reductive to say, why didn't the Great Eagles just carry Frodo and Sam to Mordor? It was genuinely not practical for a whole host of reasons. However, I do find myself having to ask why a Goldcrest Eagle couldn't have just carried me to Mampang. I guess it doesn't say how big it is. I think it's actually just ordinary eagle size now I think about it, which is big. I mean, like, they are big birds, but they're big birds, not giant birds. So I guess it would just simply be unable to carry a fully grown human being to Mampang Fortress. So, yeah, okay. Forget I said anything. What if there were like 8 very large invisible eagles? Could they not just carry me between them? Anyway, it's irrelevant because the eagle's flown back to Analand. Studying the message again, you stuff it into your tunic. The instructions are wise. If your mission is to succeed, you must undoubtedly find and destroy the arch-mage's messengers before word of your arrival reaches Mampang. For several hours you continue your trek across the barren Baklands. On the horizon, a solitary leafless tree appears and you head towards it. You may rest and take provisions here and add 2 stamina points if this is your first meal of the day. Well, if I've learned anything over the course of sorcery, it's not to eat unless it is absolutely necessary. So I will not be eating provisions at this point. A noise up in the branches disturbs you. You look up and hear a voice calling your name. High up in the branches, the bare twigs have formed themselves into a human face. An old man's face. Once again we get an old man early doors, just what I've always wanted. The last one had an old man really early doors as well. Such a bizarre fighting fantasy staple. The face is mouthing a message. The message drifts towards you. You seek the whereabouts of Shadrach of Badubak, that I know. To find him you must detour eastwards from your trail, towards the Fishtail Rock. He is expecting you. A breeze catches and disturbs the branches, and when they settle, the face has disappeared. There's a picture of the branches forming themselves into a woody old man face, and it is cracking. Absolutely lovely. The branches are almost white against a pure black background. The face looks simultaneously like a face, but also more like just some branches being twisted together. Yeah, it's really, really good. Now, do we believe the face made out of branches, or do we continue on the Northwood Trail? Well, if you can't trust an old man in a fighting fantasy adjacent book, who can you trust? That's a trick question. Old men often turn out to be insane. But we are going to trust this one. We will turn east. The Fishtail Rock comes into view a little further on. It is well named, with 2 peaks, as if a huge fish were half buried in the plain. A fire burns outside the entrance to a small cave. You call out to attract the occupant of this dwelling place, and an old man shuffles out. You recognise the face of the tree spirit. This must be Shadrach himself. I have been expecting you, he says in greeting. I know of your journey from Kare. Be it folly or bravery which takes you across the Baklands, I must warn you that none of Analand have crossed Kakbad alone and survived. Come, let us chat by the warmth of the fire. I may be of some help to you. And for my part, I wish to know what is happening in the city port." For some time you talk, telling him news of the outside world. He offers you a meal, which you may take, adding 2 stamina points if you've not yet eaten today. Ha! See, I knew skipping lunch was a good idea. Evening meal for free, thank you very much, and that'll be 2 more stamina points, returning my stamina to 17. You are anxious to know of the messengers of Mampang. "Ah, the 7 servants," he starts. "Indeed they are in the Baklands, but I know not if it was news of your journey that they carried back to Mampang. Let me tell you what I know of them, for they are no friends of mine." There is a picture of the hermit Shadrach showing off his cave. Yeah, it's fine. Not one of the better bits of work. He's hung a cow's skull over the entrance to his cave like an absolute lunatic for some reason. But apparently I still went inside. I always get the impression that there are some pictures that John Blanche was more enthused about than others, and this one feels like one of the ones he was less enthused about. It's fine, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really have that spark that we've seen in some of the better bits of work he's done. "Legend has it that some 12 years ago the arch-mage of Mampang fought and slew a mighty hydra which dwelt in the caves of High Zaman. So formidable a foe was this creature that the arch-mage took its 7 heads to Mampang, where he used his black arts to resurrect them as 7 winged serpents. They became his personal messengers, and, as an act of faith, he assigned each to one of his own gods." So that's pretty cool. I do vaguely remember that from Titan, the big book about the fighting fantasy world, now I come to think about it. And they are literal snakes after all, which is nice. "In return, the gods bestowed their own powers on the foul creatures to aid the arch-mage. The power of the sun was bestowed on the sun serpent, as was the moon on the moon serpent." Surely not. "Earth, water, fire, and air became powers of 4 more serpents, and the last, the serpent of time, was given perhaps the greatest power. But each has its own weakness. Discover these weaknesses and you may defeat the creatures, but otherwise no mortal stands a chance against their powers. The serpents keep knowledge of their own vulnerabilities as their closest secrets. I myself know only one. The air serpent may leave its body and become a puff of gas, but while in this state it will die unless it is able to re-enter its body within minutes. Destroy the unprotected body and you destroy the creature." That doesn't seem like a very useful skill compared to being a giant flying snake, but who am I to judge? Maybe it's really handy. It is now late. You may spend the night in Shadrach's cave and add 3 stamina points. Next morning you can set off again. Before you go, Shadrach offers you an ornate gale horn to aid you on your journey. So I know the gale horn is used for a particular spell, but I didn't commit it to memory because I didn't have a gale horn in my inventory. So, it sounds as though it would be kind of handy for making a big old wind. But yeah, can't remember which spell it's tied to, but hopefully I'll remember it for the next adventure, assuming I die during this one. So will we go north or rejoin the main trail? Let's rejoin the main trail. I think with these wilderness adventures, I do try and explore them in a relatively simplistic way on my first playthrough, because I like to try and get a vague idea of what the overall shape of it is. And particularly with 7 serpents to find, I'm not imagining for a second I'm going to be beating this on a first playthrough. This really does feel like it's only got one proper route through it. You carry on along the trail and stop suddenly as you notice a movement in the distance to the west. 3 shapes are moving rapidly across the plain, throwing up a thick cloud of dust. They turn and head towards you. As there is no cover, you have no choice but to let them approach. They come closer, and you can make out 3 riders on horseback, But as they draw near, you realise that the riders you saw were not riders at all. 3 centaurs are approaching. You must think quickly how you will greet them. Will you be friendly or adopt an aggressive approach? So, there is a picture of the centaurs, focusing mostly on the lead centaur. It's really good, but I will say the lead centaur is wearing an outfit with a fairly heavy spike motif. He's got a bow, he's spiked his hair into an enormous spiky mass. He's wearing some kind of pelt around his midriff, where his man bit joins his horse bit. But yeah, he's wearing some very spiky accoutrements indeed, and the overall vibe is of a being not entirely good aligned, shall we say. So I feel as though that's a clue that maybe we need to be aggressive and try and face these centaurs down. As you draw your weapon, they grab bows, notching arrows pointed at you. You stare at one another and you must now choose your next move. Will you drop your weapon and quickly cast a spell, or throw yourself into their midst and attack them? Against my better judgment, I'm going to try and cast a spell. Trying to think what might be useful in this situation. Your movement causes them to retaliate hastily. 3 arrows shoot towards you at dangerously close range. Throw 1 die for each arrow. A roll of a 1 to 3 is a hit for 3 stamina points of damage. And if all 3 hit, something bad has happened. So this feels like entirely the wrong track. I should have been friendly. Good manners cost nothing. Aggression costs you an arrow to the face, apparently. That is 1 arrow to the face. 1 arrow missed. And another arrow to the face. So that's 6 stamina altogether, reducing me to 13 stamina. Now we've got a choice of 5 spells. Rock, Dim, Foul, Dop or Sap. Let's go Dop. I think that makes people stupid. No. Dop is door open. Deduct 2 stamina points. You cast your spell and wait for something to happen. Nothing does. Your spell is designed to open doors. Meanwhile, one of the horsemen releases another arrow at you. Roll another die. A 1 to 3 indicates a hit for 2 stamina points of damage. Your only chance now is to charge at them while they reload their bows, and I have been missed by the next arrow. This is embarrassing. As you leap forward, the horsemen release their bolts, and 3 arrows fly towards you. Roll 1 die for each arrow. A roll of 1 or a 2 indicates you are hit by that arrow for 2 stamina points of damage. And then you may resolve your battle, but if at least 2 arrows hit you, you must deduct 2 skill points during this battle. So, chance to be shot again. Yep. No. So, that's another 4 stamina points, taking me down to 7. I need to deduct 2 skill, giving me an effective skill of 7, and the first horseman has a skill of 8 and a stamina of 7. I fight them one at a time in any order I like. Once I've killed 2 of them, if I survive this long and I've wounded the third at least twice, I may, if I wish, allow him to surrender. Guess I will invoke Libra, because I really don't think I can survive the fight otherwise, and return everything to its starting value, giving me a skill back to 9 as I was never struck by any arrows, and a full 19 stamina for this fight. I have used up my 1 chance to call on Libra, but if I died, I would only invoke the sausagey finger bookmark rule anyway, and this feels fairer. So this way I have at least a chance of surviving. I'm going to roll some dice. I've defeated 2 horsemen and reduced the other one to 3 stamina points, which means I can try and allow him to surrender. And the horseman reduced me to 11 stamina, so very good job that I did invoke Libra to restore my skill and stamina, because I would definitely have died had I not done so. Even at maximum skill, they did 8 points of damage, which was considerably more than the 7 I had available, and I assume they'd have done considerably more damage to me with a skill of 7. So anyway, we're trying to take this horseman's surrender. The last horseman begs for mercy. You say you will spare its life if it aids you in your quest. Noble stranger, it pants, I know you seek out the 7 serpents. My only offering is in this respect. My knowledge of these creatures is limited, but our race knows one clue to their downfall. One of them, the moon serpent, has a weakness. He cannot tolerate the power of flame. As you consider this advice, the horseman seizes its opportunity and gallops off across the plains. You search the other 2 and find 4 gold pieces and a pouch containing fine brown sand. So fine sand will be very handy for making quicksand with a magic spell. 4 gold pieces is always handy. So we know that the air serpent turns into a puff of air, and when it does that you can just stab its body to death. And the moon serpent cannot tolerate flame. Do I have anything that I can use to set fire to things? I'm not sure that I do. Hey ho. Got to find a serpent first. A long trek now lies ahead of you across the Badubak plains. In which direction will you head? To the northwest, north-northeast, or northeast? Let's go north-northeast, which is the closest thing to straight on. Let's try and get a sense of what the overall layout is. A few hundred yards ahead of you is a camp of covered wagons and carts arranged in a circle. A fire burns in the centre, and you can see bodies moving around the camp. You walk towards the caravan. Your approach is noticed, and an arrow flies through the air, landing to your left. Another lands to your right. Will you hold your hands in the air to show you mean no harm, or retrace your steps and take a wide detour round the camp? Well, let's pop our hands up in the universal symbol of surrender. You hold your arms up in the air and walk slowly forward. To your relief, no more arrows are released, although you can see bowmen with shafts at the ready covering your approach. A crowd is gathering to see who you are, and you are soon close enough to make out what sort of people are watching you. You have come across a caravan of black elves, presumably traders of some kind. As you enter the camp, they eye you suspiciously. An old elf, slightly stouter than the rest, steps forward. If you seek shelter or food, he starts, then you waste time with this caravan. What purpose are you wandering alone through the Baklands? What will your reply be? Well, there's a picture of the Black Elf caravan. Oh, it's very characterful, very kind of gently grotesque, very good. Caravans in the background, elves in the foreground in their ragged clothes with their pointy ears and big top knots. Yeah, it's very, very nice. Will we claim to be a trader and ask to see their wares? I do have quite a bit of cash. I've got 40 gold. Will you tell him of the mission and ask about the 7 serpents, or will you tell him that you're after food and shelter and that you will pay handsomely for their hospitality? I feel as though asking to see their wares will probably go down well, so that's what I'm going to do. Everyone loves money. The old elf leads you into the centre of the camp, where a large caravan stands. Its door is guarded by 2 armed elves. Tell Ula we have a customer, he orders one of the guards, who climbs into the caravan to report your arrival. A skinny black face appears at the door. And what sort of bargain hunter have we happened across here in the middle of Badubak? Asks the face. Ah, a human. Well, come inside, come inside. Let's see what bargains we can strike with one another, eh? Come on, come on. He waves you inside and you follow. Your eyes light up as you enter the caravan. It is a veritable treasure trove of valuables, magic items and equipment. Ular looks up at you over half-moon eyeglasses. He is flicking through a catalogue of some kind. And what is your art, stranger? Weaponry? Sorcery? Are you a craftsman? Or how about some fine treasures for gifts at the end of your journey? We have it all, and at fair prices too. And there's a picture of the caravan interior, and the shelves do indeed look loaded down with all manner of intriguing things. goblets, axes, arrows, hats, daggers, scrolls. A scroll entitled Secrets of the Baklands. That seems like a worthwhile thing to potentially purchase. You pause to look over his shoulder while he chatters away at you. How about piece number 227, a fine hewing axe, very useful if you're heading northwards, and only 6 gold pieces. Or piece number 93, a brass pendulum. Always hangs down, no lodestone can deflect it, 2 gold pieces to you. Or a fine pearl ring, piece number 124, a gift fit for a king. But that'll cost you 8 gold. Or a bag of victuals, let's say, piece number 17. Ideal provisions for a long journey. Only 4 gold pieces for the whole bag. So we can buy anything we wish from his shelves. If you prefer barter, you may select anything and offer it in exchange at the cost of a skill test. If you roll equal to your skill, it says the item is worth 3 gold. If you roll below your skill, it's 3 gold plus the difference in gold pieces between your skill and the amount you roll. I don't have anything I'm prepared to part with because everything I've got is basically a spell ingredient. But I'm going to have a look at a few items. This is a great way to make the old shopping trip feel a bit more exciting. So, what is there that might be handy? The pendulum is definitely handy. I'm going to go for that. The brass pendulum is exactly that, a small brass bob attached to a cord. So that's 2 gold, take me down to 38. The pendulum can be used to hypnotise people, which seems pretty handy to me. I'm going to look at the Secrets of the Baklands for 25. Oh no, is that 2 GP? Yeah, we'll definitely have that. Down to 36 gold. The parchment is worn and faded. A heading at the top reads Secrets of the Baklands, although most of the writing is illegible. By studying it carefully, you can just about make out 2 facts which may be useful. An old sorceress known as the Sham may be worth visiting as her powers and knowledge are considerable, and she is not wholly aligned to the dark side of sorcery. She dwells ahead on the Clatterback Steps in an area that must be northeast of where you are now. She appreciates being given gifts, but the parchments give a warning she is not what she appears to be. Secondly, the parchment warns of the forest of the Snatta. In this forest, the plants are as deadly as the animals, but the most deadly of the plants are affected by essence of bark. So, useful info there. There's a little book as well. Do you like a little book? Big reader. No, it's not a book, it's a little vial. Okay. Well, alright, I'm committed now. I'm buying it. I don't think you have an option to refuse. So, the label on the vial certifies that the contents are waters from the holy springs in Dadule. Although you have no way of knowing this at the time, the water has not been blessed. It is ordinary river water and has no special powers at all. So we've got some fake holy water. Might make a nice gift for someone. Maybe a sorceress. What else? I will take the provisions. Yeah, I'll take the provisions. Always handy to have. Ideal travelling provisions. Victuals are small pastry balls with tough dried meat inside. Sounds appetising. You've bought enough for 4 meals, so you've got 5 provisions. That's good. We're not dependent on the hospitality of strangers. Is there anything else I fancy? I can't remember what the pearl ring is used for. It feels like a component. And there's this, what looks like a quiver of arrows, and it's like 10 gold pieces? Oh no, it's not a quiver of arrows, it's a book. Yeah, it's a book sideways on, and the leaves looked sort of like arrows. Okay. It looks like a book of magic. Ooh, we'll have that. Excitedly, you open the spellbook. But, to your horror, you find it is a spellbook from Analand. Somehow it has fallen into the wrong hands and wound up in Kashbad. This could be very dangerous for Analand. Each country's own sorcery is one of its most closely guarded secrets. There is no other alternative. The book must be destroyed at the earliest opportunity. Trying hard to keep your composure so as not to give your discovery away, you close the book. As soon as you are able, you will destroy the book, but you may first look through it to brush up on your own knowledge of the spells. You may, if you wish, spend 5 minutes revising the sorcery spellbook printed at the end of this adventure. At no other time are you permitted to look through this book once you have embarked on your quest. Oh, that's very handy because we have got a few additional components. So we're down to 16 gold, and I think that is enough buying things. I won't do the looking up of spells on Mike. That would be very boring. Right, do we want to ask for shelter for the night, or do we want to leave the camp? I do not trust these black elves at all. I met some black elves in Kare, and they were all on drugs. And to be fair, these black elves did say that they didn't offer hospitality, so we will leave the camp. The black elves watch you as you leave the camp. To your great relief, they allow you to go without trouble. Night is soon upon you. You must shortly choose either to bed down for the night or continue through the night across the Baklands. Do you wish to rest? I do, because I could really use some additional stamina. You set up your camp. You may eat provisions if you wish before you sleep. Yes, please. Provisions now 4. Stamina now 13. Gain 2 stamina points if this is your first meal today, or 1 stamina point if you've already eaten. You lie down to sleep for the night. Noises wake you continually during the night, but you do get some sleep and rise at dawn to continue. Add 1 stamina point for your rest, but deduct 3 stamina points if you did not eat yesterday. So, stamina now 14. Excellent. And nothing horrible happened to me in the night. Which direction will you continue in? Northwest, a long trek, to the north-northwest, or northeast? I think we'll go northeast, because I think that's where the Sham was said to reside. On and on you go, pausing briefly every now and again to scout out the land ahead. At one point, you stop. Something is on the horizon. You squint ahead to try and make out the shape. It is definitely moving. You keep going and the shape becomes a little clearer. It's a small, 2-legged creature, about half your size, and it has turned to come towards you. But it is moving at a remarkable rate. Do you want to continue to see who or what this is, or do you want to head off in a different direction? Let's see what it is. You allow your visitor to approach. As it gets closer, you see that it is a small, gnome-like creature with dark skin and ugly features. Its little legs move at an incredible rate, and it helps itself along with a walking stick carved to resemble a serpent. It stops in front of you and you both look at each other. Silently, you wonder whether this is a friend or a foe. "Have it whichever way you like," says the creature in a squeaky voice. "If it's a friend, show me your friendship, give me a gift of greeting. Or if it's foe, then be gone. Get out of my way." Will you treat the little creature as a friend or a foe? Well, there's a picture of the little creature. Very characterful, big feather in the hat, serpent-shaped walking stick, and face kind of all sort of screwed up in a quizzical way. I like the fact that there's some bones been braided into the beard. But yeah, we'll treat the little creature as a friend. It seems to know my innermost thoughts. The little creature is asking for a gift as a token of friendship. Will you give something valuable? If you do, it must be something fairly valuable, not food or a useless object. So, I think this is the Sham. I think the clue's in her name. I think she pretends to be what she's not. And what can I realistically spare? I've got all of these bits and pieces, but most of them are spell components. So it's a question of what spell components do I least want to hang on to. I think the beeswax might be worth handing over. It's quite handy in a fight, but I generally try to use magic to avoid fights. So, how will the little creature react to your gift? Roll 1 die to decide. Is your gift a spell artifact? It certainly is. I mean, a spell component maybe a slightly less clunky way of putting it, but yeah, I think she likes spell components as it happens, and I roll a 5. That's good. So if it's a spell artifact, then it looks like a 1 is bad, a 2 to 4 is fine, and a 5 to 6 is good. And if it's something else, then a 1 to 3 is bad, 4 to 5 is average, and 6 is good. I assume that's how it works. But we'll find out because I've done well on this roll. A wide smile spreads across the little creature's lips. How did you know? It demands. How did you know I've been looking for one of those? Your lucky choice has been a success, but something is not quite right. The creature's voice is changing as it speaks to you, to that of a middle-aged woman. She can still be Northern Irish. Such a friend should not be teased, she says, and with these words her form changes to that of a tall woman dressed in purple robes. I am Dintanta, she starts. Dintanta of the Steppes, though some call me the Sham. I know of your mission, and I can help you. It is a credit to your wit and your courage that you've survived this far, but much danger, great danger, lies ahead. At the fortress of Mampang, beware of the sleepless ram, for even your skill will be no match for its powers. You will overcome it by uncorking this vial in its presence. She hands you a small glass vial. Guard this vial with your life, and let no one release the liquid within. I will also tell you this. A short distance ahead you will confront the Earth Serpent. His powers are considerable, but these powers exist only when he is in contact with the Earth. Perhaps this information will help you defeat the beast. Finally, I give you this in exchange for your gift. She hands you her walking stick. My serpent staff is enchanted, and will give you powers against serpents. And now I must leave you, as I must journey home before sundown. She turns herself back into the ugly little creature you first encountered, and sets off on her way. This has been a lucky encounter for you. You may add 2 luck points. Her serpent staff will weaken any of the serpents you come across. You may deduct 2 skill points from any serpents you fight while carrying this stick. You also notice that it has been carved from an oak sapling, so may be used in your spells. You can freeze people in place with that. This is very handy. Well worth daubing in the beeswax. The creature has now disappeared in the distance, and you turn to make your way onwards. Which way will you now head? To the northwest or northwards? You may rest and eat provisions if you wish. Let's go north and deal with this serpent. Your long walk across the Baklands is coming to an end. In the distance you can see the wide fringe ahead of you that marks the boundary of the forest of the Snatta. You climb up onto a rock to get a better view of what lies ahead. The green spread of the forest continues to the shore of the Lake Ilklala, which you can just make out on the horizon. The rock you are standing on is a suitable place to eat provisions if you wish to do so. No, you're fine. As you stand to leave, your foot dislodges a chunk of rock which scuttles off down the slope. Halfway down, it stops unnaturally and reverses direction. It rolls towards you, and you watch in amazement as it bumps painfully into your ankle. Lose 1 stamina point. Stamina now 13. You reach down to rub it, and as you do so, a rumbling shakes the ground and knocks you off balance. The peak of the rock explodes into the air, erupting like a volcano and spraying stones everywhere. And there's a picture of precisely that happening. It's another one of those ones that feels like it was done towards deadline day, let's be honest. Big explosion, some rocks flying through the air. It's nice enough. I feel as though maybe there's better things that could have been chosen, but hey-ho, it's fine. So do we want to run to avoid the falling rocks or try some magic? So we can go doze, mag, walk, fog or huff. Now huff I know makes a big wind. That could maybe knock the stones out of the air. But walk makes a shield on my arm, I think at a cost of 1 gold piece. So I will go for walk. Deduct 1 stamina point. Stamina now 12. Do you have a gold piece with you? If not, you cannot use this spell, and while you are trying to cast it, you are hit by falling rocks for 2 stamina points. If you have a gold piece, you can cast your spell to form a magical shield which will protect you from the rock shower. Turn to the next section, but using your shield you will not lose any stamina points. So, gold now 15. You cover your head and run downhill while the stones shower the ground all around you. Roll 1 die. This is the number of stamina points you lose as they fall on you. I'm fine. I've got my walk shield. You may, if you wish, use luck here. No, I won't. The falling stones, however, roll under your feet, making it difficult to keep your balance. You slip and land on the ground with a thump. In fact, the thump that you are expecting does not quite happen. Instead, your heart flutters as the short fall you anticipated lasts longer than it should. The ground below you has opened up and you have fallen into a pit resembling, perhaps appropriately, a freshly dug grave. But your landing is soft and you lift yourself back to your feet. The pit is around 9 feet deep and you may just about be able to jump up and grab the edge to pull yourself up. As you are considering what to do, a creaking sound below puts you on your guard. The earth shakes in the centre of the pit and a rocky protrusion breaks through the surface. You stare at the smooth-faced rock and step back as a hissing sound comes from it. Its surface changes from grey to red and steam rises from it. This rock is boiling hot. In a panic, you jump up to grab the rim of the pit and haul yourself out. Your fingers catch the edge, but as you pull yourself up, something bites your hand. This is not a serious wound, but it causes 1 stamina point of damage and makes you lose your grip. What will your next move be? Stamina now 11. So, will you try again to lift yourself out of the pit, or wait to see what happens, or cast a spell? So we've got bag, mud, foff, dock, or fix. I feel as though maybe the only one of those that might be handy is mud. I feel as though causing the boiling rock to sink into some mud, some quicksand, might not be the worst idea, so that's what I'm going to go for. Deduct 1 stamina point. So down to stamina 10, getting through the old stamina. Do you have any sand with you? I do. If you have some sand, you may throw it on the hot rock and cast your spell. Your magic creates a pool of quicksand around the rock and it begins to sink into the earth once more, bubbling and boiling. As it disappears, you have a chance to lift yourself out of the pit. Back on the surface, the danger is by no means subsiding. Cracks are appearing in the ground, radiating out from the pit. One breaks open between your legs and you jump aside just in time to avoid being swallowed. A large boulder on the top of the hill is teetering on the point of rolling down towards you. And as if that wasn't enough, a small green snake is wrapping itself around your ankle and preparing to bite you. What will you do first? Try to find an area safe from the cracking ground, push the boulder off in a different direction, or get rid of the snake? It's the snake I'm mostly concerned about, so let's try and get rid of the snake. Ooh, is this going to be a proper serpent? Is this the serpent of earth that we were told about? You reach down to grab the creature. It darts at you to bite your hand, but you manage to swat it to the ground. Only then do you see the snake as it really is. As it lies on the ground, its skin splits. From within, a dark brown serpent emerges, as if in some reaction to its exposure to the air. The earth serpent grows rapidly before your eyes. It unfurls great wings and coils up before you, hissing menacingly. We can deduct 14 from this. We can force the earth serpent to tell us some information. The earth serpent spies the ring. "Enemy of Mampang," it hisses at you. "You have found the serpent ring. Then, as our gods decree, I must tell you this. Offer no gold to Valigna if you value your life. But this knowledge will do you no good. Here is another offering." The serpent darts out at you and narrowly misses, striking your arm. Now go back and deal with the serpent. So we've got spells, dumb, huff, doze, nap, and zen. Of these, I'm going to try and use huff, because I think that's going to blow it into the air and make it no longer connected to the ground, which will make it weaker. Deduct 1 stamina. So we're down to stamina 9. Stamina becoming a concern. Do you have a gale horn with you? I do. If you have a gale horn, you may cast your spell and blow the horn. A tremendous gust of air blasts from the horn, which catches the serpent's wings and lifts it into the air. The serpent roars and hisses as you lift it into the air, but once off the ground, its power is lost. The living earth settles and the serpent itself shrinks once more to the size of a small snake. Grabbing it by the neck, it is an easy matter for you to destroy the beast. Yeah, awesome. That feels so cool. I suspect I've already missed at least one serpent as well. As the serpent's power dies, so does the living earth. Everything is now still. You may rest for a short while to catch your breath, then set off again towards the forest. So, 1 serpent down, 6 to go. Ahead of you, perhaps an hour's walk away, are the fringes of the forest of the Snatta, the next stage of your journey. After a brief rest, you collect yourself and set off towards it. So I've been recording for approaching an hour, so I think this is probably going to be a decent place to stop. Let me make a note of where I am. I will continue this playthrough off mic. I didn't actually die in the recorded playthrough. Go team. I feel pleased with myself. Having a nice time with this. I suspect I may have to draw some kind of map, maybe, to assist me in hunting down all of these serpents. But it doesn't feel as though the geography is hugely complicated. So that's something. Yeah, nicely written. Lots of fun. Tremendous imagination on display in the encounters. Having a lovely time with that. I'm going to go away now. Play it on my own time. I'll be back for you in just a few moments with some closing remarks. Tatty bye. So, my playthrough ended on the shores of Lake Ilklala, where I was entirely unable to find a means of crossing the water and thus had to end my adventure. Perhaps I became a fisherman or retreated to the forest of Snatta to live as a tree. It's something of a pathetic end, but it's written in such a way that as you explore the different options, you gradually become aware that you aren't going to be able to get across the lake, and that sense of dawning hopelessness is something I haven't often felt while playing a gamebook, although in 2025 I have to say I feel it all the time in real life. Well, so much for Albany Gardaloo. Thankfully, I have since managed to complete the gamebook and I have thoughts, which is handy considering the format of the show. Firstly, I was actually pretty close to the end on my first playthrough. The lake gates off the final few encounters, but the majority of the action is already behind you. You've got the plains and the forest forming the bulk of the action, and then a very short finale beyond the lake, which feels a little bit undercooked, but does at least save a scary serpent for the very end, which is good. Crossing the lake involves summoning the ferryman, and the means for doing that is actually quite close at hand, which I always like. I was concerned that adding an item gate on top of the need to find all the different serpents, plus the gear you need to defeat them without throwing hands, would make this book feel punishingly difficult, but it actually feels pretty fair. I got to the end on my third playthrough, and although it wasn't a perfect run, I still did well enough that I feel like I could have left it there and been satisfied enough with my performance. There's a lot of stuff to find in the Seven Serpents, but very little of it is actually vital, and long-time listeners will know that that's the approach I prefer in a gamebook. You can technically finish the gamebook without finding a single serpent, though that is far from ideal. The arch-mage of Mampang will be well warned of your approach in this ending, and you won't get any bonus for finishing the book. Find more serpents and you'll end up getting your skill, stamina and luck restored, and deal with all of the serpents and you'll be able to sneak up on Mampang unawares, which unlocks a hidden starting paragraph in the next book, which is very cool indeed. Finding all 7 serpents is a real challenge, but not quite as difficult as it first appears, because you actually only need to face 6 out of the 7, which means that the book is sneakily slightly easier than it's pretending to be, which is quite nice. Now, you know I love this sort of thing. Easy to get to the end and hard to get the best ending is one of my favourite ways to design gamebooks, and it works really well here, as it almost always does. It goes deeper too. If you've got the magic ring from Kare, you have an added incentive to find all the serpents, because each one will reveal a handy clue for the final volume in the series, and that gives you a little reward for being extra diligent. On top of this, each serpent has a way that you can defeat it without fighting, but you can always brute force your way past them if you prefer, meaning that if you want to cheat, or if you want to just deal with every problem in your path by punching it repeatedly in the face, and let's be honest, which of us hasn't, then that's a perfectly valid approach to take. There's a few hidden paragraphs in this book, but they are deployed well, and only the one involving summoning the ferryman is actually mandatory. Hidden paragraphs can be very impactful when used sparingly, and here the usage feels about right to me. I got the little rush of pleasure that comes from spotting when a hidden paragraph could be used, but the cognitive load of remembering all the different clues was entirely manageable. I really like the way the Serpents frame the action. They do a lot for the narrative. They give you a reason to explore rather than just trying to cross the Baklands as quickly as possible. That's one reason why scavenger hunts are so popular in gamebooks. They encourage players to engage with the whole book and take risks in order to complete the scavenger hunt. There's a nice second level to the Serpents in that you also need to try and work out how to defeat them, and I think that's a really neat little twist. The different weaknesses help differentiate the Serpents and make them feel more like video game bosses, and makes each encounter feel unique. It's always cool once you find out their special vulnerability and get to use it on them. The encounters with the Serpents also gives the book a nice shape as well. The repeated dangerous encounters make the world feel hostile, but also purposeful. The evil of Mampang is present in the Seven Serpents in a way that it's really not in the Shamatanti Hills or Kare. There's a sense of things escalating. Even though the framing device is very similar to the Shamatanti Hills, you're still essentially just crossing a wilderness. I will say that the only weakness with the scavenger hunt approach is that, paradoxically, if you happen to hit the right path straight off, you've got very little incentive to explore alternative routes through an area. So as soon as you've found a serpent, you feel as though you're kind of committed to finding it on all subsequent playthroughs, even if you're aware that there's quite a big chunk of the book you might be missing out on by doing that. Still, that's a small enough problem, and people like me will go back and will look for all the hidden areas because we just like finding all of the areas in a game book. That's just fun. Because there are 6 proper serpent encounters, they do vary a bit in how impactful they feel. You can encounter the fire serpent twice, which is awesome, because failing to deal with it the first time feels like a real body blow. The earth serpent is probably the best actual encounter because, as you heard on the recorded playthrough, there's a good few stages to the fight before you even meet the serpent, as it tries to bury you under a bijou little volcano. Some of the other serpents feel less well developed. The air serpent in particular doesn't land especially well. I mean, it's more or less directly in your path, and defeating it can involve reusing something that worked on a different serpent, which is nice from a difficulty perspective but doesn't feel quite as satisfying as finding a really unique way to approach it. Still, on balance, I think the serpents are great, characterful enemies who represent a significant threat without being overwhelming. They're a real highlight of the book. Another highlight, developing from previous books in the series, is the generally deep encounter design. It's not just the serpents that have multiple different approaches, it's a common feature, and it makes it feel immersive, albeit at a significant cost, which I will come to later. Especially if you use magic, you'll often find a wide range of different approaches to the world of sorcery. A great example is the set piece where you meet the Black Elf traders, which is slyly much more detailed than it first appears. There's a well-hidden path through that encounter, which will net you an extremely helpful discount when you come to buy stuff from them. That's super cool, and finding it on a late playthrough made replaying many times feel that little bit more worthwhile. I need to say again how much fun the presentation of the shopping trip is as well. It's something I've grown very weary of, but the combination of weird and wonderful items for sale and the very unusual way of presenting the wares managed to make it feel entirely fresh on this occasion. We should talk about the magic system because it underpins so much of the depth. There's big positives here, but also some interesting negatives that I hadn't been fully sensible of before this book. In terms of the good stuff, the search for spell components adds another little pressure to explore and also provides a natural way for your roster of available spells to be gradually expanded, adding more options and more complexities as you go through the books in the series. I like that there's an opportunity to restudy the spellbook midway through Seven Serpents, as this gives you the chance to memorise a few new spells that you've got the components for. And every time I found a new component, it just gave me a little lift. The more advanced spells tend to have components associated with them, but they also tend to cost less stamina than the core spells, which is a neat way of balancing them. It's a lovely example of how you can layer on complexity over time without changing the core system at all, and that's an astonishingly clever bit of design. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out there is a bit where summoning goblins is actually helpful for what feels like the first time ever. Thankfully, there's also a bit where summoning goblins is absolutely no help whatsoever, so I feel tradition is being maintained at the same time. The magic system being stamina based also has an interesting side effect of constantly draining your stamina and making it feel much more like a resource than in some other gamebooks. There's relatively few places to heal in Seven Serpents, and that makes the choice to use spells feel consequential, especially if you need to use one of the big 4 stamina draining spells. I generally found it quite tense, dealing with the constant pressure of my stamina draining away. Just a point or two here, a point or two there, every time I cast a spell. There's never quite enough chances to regain health either, aside from invoking Libra. With the wizard being a mediocre fighter, it also makes the decision as to whether to definitely spend some health on a spell or maybe lose even more in a fight a really thoughtful one. Though I think if you've played the earlier books, you can come away with an effective +3 skill from the first book in the series, so that will make most of the fights fairly easy for an average wizard and very easy indeed for a warrior with maximum skill. It's not all peaches and cream, however. There's some issues with the magic system that become more prominent as you memorise more spells and have more of the components needed to cast them. One is that deciding which spell to offer becomes harder and harder for the designer. In Book 1, the fact that you get 5 different choices feels unbelievably expansive, but by this point, I sometimes found myself wondering why I wasn't being given the option to cast particular spells that seemed like they ought to be useful. One regular omission is the spell Law, which enables you to control the will of non-sentient creatures for a short time. Surely that ought to be an option any time you come across an animal threat. And it isn't. And from one point of view, I get why. Dealing with the same problem in the same way gets boring pretty quickly, and that's not really what magic systems should do. But it does feel like an omission that you can't mind control the various beasts that try and ruin your day. Law is one of the core spells and it costs 4 stamina, which does balance it quite nicely on one level, but it doesn't require any components, and I think in retrospect it should have been locked behind a single-use component since the effect is clearly too useful too often. There's other times where I thought it would have been really handy to use the spell Dud to generate some illusory gold, but the text seemed to feel otherwise. This stuff is just very hard to balance in a world represented by finite choices, and I do want to emphasise that overall Steve Jackson does a good job of giving you a range of choices that feel appropriate. It's just occasionally I look at it and I think, I feel as though there was a better option here. One of the things that makes Magic fun in tabletop games is the way players can adapt spells to find new uses for them. You can imagine an enterprising wizard propping open a sliding door with a pile of magical fool's gold, for instance, or conjuring up a magical wind to keep a secret conversation from being overheard. In a gamebook, you only get the options that the writer gives you, but in a gamebook with 40 spells, it's all too easy to think that there ought to have been a 6th option you should have been given on top of the 5 you're actually offered. Something that follows on from that is when you're given the opportunity to use spells. In a game as focused on magic as this one, you want more rather than less chances to use magic, but even so, there's going to be times when it feels like you weren't given the chance to cast a spell and you should have been. Let's not forget that every time you give someone the option to cast a spell in a sorcery book, you're committing to at least 5 more sections to resolve the encounter on top of anything else the player might try. This has a predictable knock-on effect in that all of the sorcery books so far have felt oddly short, despite being considerably longer than the usual fighting fantasy book in terms of section count. There's more than 35 opportunities to use magic in Seven Serpents, so that's 175 sections minimum being concerned with the outcome of spellcasting, which leaves 325 for everything else, which suddenly doesn't make the book feel that long, especially when you remember that the magic system is technically optional, so you also need to have alternatives for non-magic users on top of those 35 chances to use magic. There's another interesting knock-on effect as well, and one that's a bit more insidious. The presence of the magic system makes it harder to create throwaway encounters. While combat encounters can become a bit grinding if there are too many, they are tremendous for filling in some of the atmosphere of an area. If you're in a crypt and you're fighting a few bats, rats, and possibly the odd carnivorous worm, that fantasy of being in a crypt is being reinforced by the specific monsters you're meeting, even if they aren't much of a challenge. The presence of the magic system makes these kind of colour encounters that much harder to include, because they'll feel weird if you don't include magic, but at the same time, including magic will suddenly make every throwaway need much more careful design and balance. It's not absolutely a problem, formally speaking, but it does push you very much towards including fewer combat encounters and more NPC encounters, which is perhaps why you run into so many chatty people over the course of the Seven Serpents, which perhaps undercuts the idea of the Baklands as a truly deadly and hostile environment. I don't want to over-egg this, because Steve Jackson has still been able to give the different locales of the Seven Serpents a distinctive feel, and he does this through the use of recurring motifs. The forests of Snatta have a signature denizen, the invisible and very hungry Snatta cat. You can run into these predators in a few different locations, and it gives the forest something of a stable identity. Similarly, you can tangle with the brutish clattermen of the plains in a few different places, and that too helps suggest something of an ecology for the area. The focus on non-combat encounters isn't all bad by any means. I've already mentioned the Black Elf Caravan, which is tremendous fun to explore, and towards the end of the book you get to mingle with some swamp goblins, who can prove surprisingly helpful, to say nothing of the various old men, sages, sorcerers and priests you can bump into and hang out with. However, I do think this book would have benefited from stringing the big set pieces together with a bunch of low-stakes fantasy cliché nonsense. Unfortunately, the system just isn't really set up for that, and in this book it really starts to show. Hopefully the final book being an absolute unit will go some way towards making the adventure feel that much more epic, but I suspect some of the same problems will still apply. There's some cracking moments in the Seven Serpents though. I definitely enjoyed the centaurs we came across in the recorded playthrough, who got to stand there and shoot arrows at me whilst I waved my hands about, failing to achieve anything. There's a little ruined temple that feels like it fell in from a slightly different game book, and some trademark Steve Jackson weirdness, like a possibly sentient whirlwind that has shades of Citadel of Chaos. Another book, now I think about it, that also feels incredibly short thanks to the presence of a magic system. There's a little fox monster that reacts to being stabbed by going on fire. That's lots of fun, and the mechanics for it are clunky but very characterful. Overall, I very much enjoyed the Seven Serpents. The magic system remains both the best thing about the series and a bit of a millstone around its neck, but it makes me think hard about how I'd approach something similar, and the honest answer is I'm not sure I could do anything better. There's maybe something in a softer and more adaptive magic system, and I think some kind of MacGuffin which takes magic off the table some of the time could be really helpful. Perhaps magic only works at night, or the winds of magic ebb and flow, making magic hard or even impossible to use at certain points. It could be something as simple as magic taking enough time that you can't use it on a whim, but only when you've got a chance to prepare yourself. I guess the Shamatanti Hills has that wretched mite who stops you from using magic, but that just feels very frustrating. If you're going to sometimes take magic off the table, I think you want to be upfront about it as a possibility so that the player doesn't feel cheated out of something they were entitled to. Regardless, I think this is a very solid gamebook which has some amazing moments, but maybe not quite enough starch to go with it. It's really calling out for the gamebook equivalent of a portion of chips. It's not as good as Kare City Port of Traps, which I thought was really good, but I think I like it more than the Shamatanti Hills, since the stakes feel bigger and the action feels that bit more consequential. It continues the series' tradition of not feeling as though it's got a proper climax. You get to a certain point with the Sorcery books and they just seem to stop. The Shamatanti Hills finishes with rescuing someone, but it does feel a bit half-hearted, and Kare's big finale is opening a door. The final Serpent here turns out to be not much more impressive than any of the others, and indeed less impressive than the Earth Serpent, which feels odd, especially from the man who wrote Balthus Dire, one of the best finales in fighting fantasy. The art is always solid and frequently great, though there's still the odd picture that feels like it was rushed out without too much thought. When he's applying himself, though, John Blanche is superb and brings a wonderful sense of the grotesque to the action. That is all for this episode. Join me in August when I'll be following a listener suggestion and doing a fan-made fighting fantasy book as the bonus episode, and of course finishing off the Sorcery series as well. I hope you'll join me for that. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch, you can email me at hjdoomretrofun, all one word, at gmail.com, or you can follow me on Blue Sky at hjdoom. Don't forget, I'm also reviewing terrible cheap movies over on Popular Antiquarian. This month I've done a RoboCop and an Avatar knockoff, but the one you won't want to miss is my review of Titanic 2, the unofficial sequel to Titanic absolutely no one asked for. Thank you very much for listening, take care, and I'll see you soon.